Hi, welcome to a run through of my 60s design books. Now, of course, I've got lots of books with pictures of 60s material, and I could probably have about 400 books in this. I've got about 30 odd. I'm just going to run through the various books, which I think are sort of like the 60s. This is the Chronicle of the Decade. I love these sort of books. This is a wonderful one with all the front pages, headlines, etc. And I'm just going to show you some examples there. You can see there the Daily Telegraph. This obviously is the Daily Telegraph all the way through, but it gives a great snapshot of the 60s, all the various things. Now, it's obviously not particularly a great design book, but it does at least give you a sort of feel for the design and the time. What would the 60s be without, of course, music? This one's The Beatles to Bowie, the 60s Exposed. Now, this was an exhibition, fortunately, I didn't go to. Really regret that I didn't go to this one. There's quite often lots of exhibitions, but some really great images all the way through this book. So going all the way through 1962 there. And you can see some lovely pictures, obviously of London of the 60s, as well as some other pictures there of someone, Jerry and the Pacemakers. And there you've got Twinkle and many others. For design, I think this is a great one. Now, obviously, it's not design. It's not showing you how to create the designs or anything. This is 1960s scrapbook. It's just full of just all the 60s. You've got to see loads and loads of pictures. I love these scrapbooks. I've got ones for obviously the 70s ones. There's the Edwardian one. There's a war one and so on. But it's just full of just great stuff. Now, lots of these things I would love to see in my house. Unfortunately, I think quite a lot of them are quite expensive. Obviously, some of these things, of course, you just can't get at all now. They have Lion Sponge Sandwich. That sounds nice, doesn't it? Tango, bitter lemon drink. I'm certain you probably can get that still. But lots of these ice creams and lollies and things you definitely cannot get. I would love to see those. Zoom. I love Zoom. Zoom was great. There was Jumbo, Fab, and many others. Of course, you've got lots of other things like Tide, Radiant. I remember that. All, of course, the magazines, the fashion magazines, Twiggy there, and Cindy. And, of course, Radio Times and many, many others. Now, of course, that is the thing. I've got lots of other magazines, but this is like the books. So TV Times and Radio Times, full of course, various designs as well. Now, this one's quite an unusual one. Television show book. I don't know how many of these sort of ones are around in terms of different volumes of this, but this is quite a fascinating one for all the various images of the time. You've got lots of the stars, obviously. Now, I think this must be very early 60s. This is definitely early. You've got obviously Cliff and all those sort of. You've got Lulu, 77 Sunset Strip, Emergency Ward 10, all that jazz, Morecambe Wise, and many others. But it's full of some just great pictures, and obviously Cliff there, and the shadows, and of course many others. It doesn't even feature the Beatles, I don't think. So this clearly is slightly before the Beatles. So the television, and that's the ATV. God, I haven't seen ATV for ages and ages. Now, here was definitely a design book, a mod design book. Modernism to mod. I think that's sort of covering the period there. But it's obviously a lot of text in this, and you've got lots and lots of examples, obviously, of the buildings, as well as, of course, the other designs. Hamilton there. You've got, obviously, the haircut designs. You've got the various, obviously, the clothes there. Also like the things like the seats. I mean, look at that. That looks like an incredibly uncomfortable one. Disposable paper chair. I don't know. Might have been very nice. Of course, it's full of great pictures, of course, of Carnaby Street, which is actually that was 1966, that picture. It's got lots of text. It's also, of course, you've got Baker Street. That's quite amazing. Now, I don't know if, of course, I've never actually gone to that street to actually look. I wonder, you probably can't see any of that now. It's obviously all been completely gone over. I wonder if it's still underneath. Did it get removed, I wonder? Or is it still there? Who knows? And also you've got some other great design there as well. I love those ones. This sort of weird plastic blow chair. One of the first and most successful inflatables. Can you buy that now? Anyway, Pompidou Centre, of course, and many others. This was a Channel 4 TV series, the 60s. I don't know if it's been on recently. I haven't seen it. Maybe there's DVDs or Blu-ray or etc. for that. But you can see there lots of examples of various things from the 60s. Obviously, someone waving some pound notes there. And also, of course, lots of great scenes there. Vince Taylor's, whatever that says, Top 10 Club, apparently. And obviously many, many other examples, obviously, of the youth at the time. Obviously, that's Brighton, or probably one of those places, Hastings, etc. And, of course, obviously, hippies. And also many, Harold Wilson there. Harold's a hit. Maybe Starmer should be having that sort of thing as well. T-shirts with Starmer's up. No, I am not going to go there. And also you've got there various women's, what's it says? Can't read the writing there, unfortunately. It's just slightly crossed over at that point. And of course, various other things. So the 60s wasn't all, of course, full of glossy, the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, etc. There were a lot of various broken down sort of alleyways. I don't know what they're selling there. Looks like sort of market of some sort, I guess. I don't know. But anyway, great picture of the time. Patty Boyd, My Life in Pictures. I really love this book. It's absolutely superb. It's full of some great fashion magazines. Obviously, Patty Boyd, of course, George Harrison, and obviously Eric Clapton as well, she was married to. But of course, well, she's done lots of things in her own right. So there's some obviously examples there of pictures. But it's got lots of, like I say, magazines, pictures, personal pictures, as well as some more pictures of Patty Boyd. In fact, it's a book solid with Patty Boyd. But it's also, of course, got lots of mentions. Obviously, like there, the Beatles there, scene numbers 7, 10, 14 or something. And some more examples there. Life at Kinfauns. And of course, various magazines and papers. I don't know where that was from. Everybody's. Oh, an Australia one, registered in Australia. So you can see, obviously, loads of pictures of the 60s all across the world. This is a lovely one, the 60s, a Faden book. And this is Decade of Design Revolution. And it's full, of course, loads of great pictures, habitat, all the various shops, all the designs of sort of what your house would look like at the time. Oh, look at that one. Wow, that looks amazing. Sort of perfect out for J.G. Ballard or something, wouldn't it? High Rise. I just watching that, actually. High Rise was just brilliant. I know it's more the 70s sort of thing, 75. But this is full of some great designs all the way through it. Really hefty book as well. Faden Decade of Design. Now, this one's a fashion book, but it's obviously more than just the 60s. She's got other designs, but there's a lot of the 60s in this as well. So just go through there. You can see different books. Profumo there, obviously Christine Keeler, I should say, and also going into the 70s as well. I love this book. This one is one of my favourites. Lifestyle illustration of the 60s. Just full of some really... And I bought quite a lot of magazines, mainly because of all the various imagery that are in them. And obviously some of them are in this, which is quite nice. So this one's from Women's Journal, Woman's Own. You can see just beautiful artwork. And there's also another one, the 50s one. I was sad that they never brought out a 1970s one. Would have been really nice. Obviously 1980s, probably it's all complete change, but it would have been photos. Also, a 1930s one would have been really good as well. But this one is just glorious. 1960s here, 61. It's going for year by year, so you can see as it changes. You've got design completely changes. And also, of course, it goes into the 60s, 67, 60s, etc. I don't know what that was, 1965. You can definitely see the styles changing there. And then into this 1966. There's some examples there, 1966. And into, obviously, more psychedelic period, 1967, 68, etc. Now, one trouble with a lot of these books, of course, is sometimes the pictures end up being the same. I mean, at the end of the day, they can obviously choose various pictures. They can say, oh, that's a good picture. And you quite often see the same sort of design in one book and in another book. And there's obviously lots and lots of these books, probably thousands more than the ones I've got. And, of course, probably lots came out in the 60s and 70s. And a lot of it probably pretty hard to get now. But this is what I remember seeing quite a lot in my local library where you used to get design books from the 60s. And I don't think I've seen any of them around. Certainly not easy to pick up. So 1966 and all of that. Design and Consumers, Britain 1960-69. Certainly covers the years, obviously. And again, you can see, of course, things like making, was it Kenwood Chef? Don't think I've ever had one of those. You can see lovely design there. That's always quite good. It's got lots and lots of references. And that's the thing quite often when you look at that. You can see all the references there. So you can see all 1976, 1960. So you, of course, can go and find all these various articles. Some probably quite easy to find. Probably some you need to go to, like the British Library or something, find them there. And you see Bieber there, of course, and the design there. And also many other designs. Again, more chairs. Can't beat a book about the 60s and chairs. One thing actually I hardly remember, particularly the chairs I had were all very basic chairs. I don't think they would ever turn up in any design book at all. And of course, all the various estates, etc. there. You've got Manchester 1969. Wow, a lovely little picture of Manchester 1969. I bet that's changed quite considerably. And you've also got, obviously, lots of other fashion designs there. Twiggy again. Twiggy always, of course, turns up. Twiggy again. And, of course, Centre Point there. Good old Centre Point. I mean, I think that's changed quite a bit as well. There's quite a lot of different design around that area. In fact, that whole area has changed in recent years. Now, this is a US one, not a UK one. This is Golden Age of Advertising in the 60s. And so it's full of things like Budweiser, whatever it is, Bergy or something it says there. And loads, obviously, of drinks, as well as, obviously, cigarettes and things that, of course, nowadays you cannot advertise. So it's full of advertisements for various things. And, obviously, cars and things. Skyrocket, Oldsmobile, no idea. Never driven one, so no idea. Those sort of things. Obviously, they're very popular cars, all these ones. You've got here a wide track Pontiac, Hondas, and many, many others. But it's full of some great images there of the 1960s in America. This is obviously part of a series, I assume, 20th Century Architecture 6, the 60s. And it's got the Journal of the 20th, so you can see there. But it's full of, again, lots of great images of shopping, fashion design, etc. Also all the various boutiques and things seen around there. Amazing what some of the designs were. They look really impressive. Obviously, in some were very sort of more granny takes a trip. Obviously, King's Road. And also you've got there the NLA House in Croydon. Vaguely remember that. I do remember seeing that. Used to go to Croydon a lot, so it was great going. The amazing shopping centre there that was always brilliant. So I must have seen that place. Eros Catford, place that I haven't been to that often, but you've got also other designs there. I love these ones where it actually shows all the diagrams of the thing. You've got there Brunswick Centre, been around that a number of times. Got Waitrose and all that. Very close to a comic mart that I go to, as well as a book fair. And I always pop into that. And you've got up there some detail of engraved frontispiece for designs of pavilion at Brighton. Looks very old-fashioned, doesn't it? That I don't think that really looks very much the 60s. And of course got many more, obviously, images of the 60s. This one's a more cartoon design of the 60s. The swinging 60s, beatniks and beehives. Bob Dewar. I'm not sure. But it's a really nice little book. It really captures the spirit of the 60s. The era begins and you've got all the various things there. The Teddy Boys, of course. And then going into the style, the various... Oh, look at that tie. Absolutely. I had a tie like that. Not exactly that tie, but certainly an absolutely huge tie. I love that. I don't know why I got rid of it. It's one of those ones I think, shouldn't have got rid of it because it's just good. Not that I'd ever wear it. It's not the sort of thing you particularly want to go. But when I was younger, I thought, I loved the 60s, so I was always books, Lady Chassie's Lover, Now and So. Imagine that. Probably was like that as well. The world of work as well. You've got there smoking in the office is fine. Don't think that sign would be up nowadays. And of course got lots of other examples there of all the various things at the time. Donatello, I think more Renaissance period, and obviously tie-dye there, and you've got other things. Well, I just love this book. Beatniks and Beehives, a really lovely little book, The Swinging 60s. Art and the 60s. This was tomorrow. I think it was an exhibition, wasn't it, recently? This was tomorrow. Anyway, I don't think it's connected with it. But however, you've got lots and lots of great examples of the design and artwork of the 60s in this. You can see there, lots of examples there. This one, Richard Hamilton. Who's this one? Colin Selt. And, well, Mick Jagger there, Cecil Beaton. And looks like a Liquid Reflections, whatever that is. But still, full of some great imagery of the 60s. And yet more, of course, you have to have more architecture. 60s source book. This is a lovely book. This is one of my favourites, certainly one of the first books I really got of 60s design. And I love this one so much that I got rid of it and I had to go and get it again. There's always a way. I do that too often. I always regret it. But you've got here, again, architecture. Lots of great architecture. Love, of course, the Post Office Tower, or, of course, Telecom Tower, or whatever it's called now, because it's been sold. So I don't know what it's going to change its name to. And you've got, obviously, other places there. I don't think that's Lincoln Centre, isn't it? And, of course, more lovely buildings there. Brutalist style, British pop art as well. Look at that. I mean, that's brilliant. Now, I'd love to get a book. Now, I can never say his name. Eduardo Pelosi. Of course, J.G. Ballard, he was like New Wave and all that sort of period. Just absolutely great. And I've seen a few books, but unfortunately, they're quite expensive now, so I've never bought any more of these sort of... Oh, look at that. You can see that. I'm just looking at that, how that's actually shimmering there. Bridget Riley... And you got there, see-through and topless. That's a good one, isn't it, to put onto there. Hippie look, of course, the Beatles. Aircrafts, inspiration, psychedelia, inspirations, packaging, and, of course, posters. 60s design, this is by Taschen book, lovely little Taschen book. Can't remember where I got this one. Not to be, it's obviously a library book that was obviously removed. But again, it's got lots of these great pictures of all the various fashion shops. Again, some obviously repeated. Mail West 1. This is a cream album cover there. Of course, more offices and houses. Absolutely great. And more chairs. I don't think that's the easiest of chairs to sit on, is it? I mean, that really, you'd slide off that, wouldn't you? And more posters. I think that would give you a serious headache. I must admit, that was quite amazing. As well as, of course, things like the Observer supplement. Now, I would love to see a book of those supplements, all the covers. I mean, there was loads and loads in the 60s and 70s that I think they were just brilliant, brilliant covers. And very rarely ever see these things. And they're quite expensive to pick up. So the Observer supplement one there, that'd be just great to sit on. More chairs. Is that all everything people did? I'm certain they didn't sit down all the time. But when you look at all these books, all you see is chairs. And also, of course, absolutely lovely space age design there. And yet more chairs. As of course, throwaway dresses with Bob Dylan on the front cover there. Pauline Boty, British pop art, soul sister. This is full of some great images, pictures of the time, obviously. Now, of course, the first picture I show isn't of Pauline Boty, but also it's got full of, obviously, lots of articles and things that she, I think she was involved in. Oh, that was the Anti-Uglies, it said. Very odd. At the Royal College of Art, as well as the Royal Court, the Day of the Prince, Colour Her Gone, and another picture there. Rock and pop memorabilia. This is obviously the Miller, the 60s ones. I don't know, obviously probably covers obviously other periods as well. You've got the Rolling Stones, full of some great, obviously you've got the Sex Pistols, so obviously it does cover other periods of the 60s and 70s. You've got Elton John and many others. Some of the clothes of the period as well as the musical instruments of the period as well. This book is definitely obviously collected in the 60s, whereas the other one was slightly probably other periods as well. You got there 1965 all the way through. You can see all the various chronological there. And more chairs. You can collect them. I don't know how much it says. Oh, 600 to 900, 100 to 300. And of course, that was when this book came out for that chair. Again, I wouldn't buy it for 300 or 100, to be honest. Also, some of the albums, of course. I've got lots of the albums. I used to buy lots of albums, I should say. Still kept quite a few. I really love those sort of mono albums. Obviously, the Beatles, Bob Dylan, that sort of period. But you got here Marie Quant lipstick. How much does that go for? I wonder. Not that I'm going to be buying it. So 250. Wow. Ceramics, lots of ceramics. Now, maybe some of these ones will be... Oh, that's unbelievable. You can get those, can't you? Still now, I'm certain you can. 350. Woo. British design. Oh, they're a bit cheaper. Actually, I love sort of those vintage shops. You can find, there's a vintage shop in Maidstone where I live, and also in Rochester where you can go and sort of sign 60s things. And I think, wow, none of them are actually anywhere as pricey as this. But maybe there's obviously, there's lots of other examples there. Wow. I'm not certain I really want to wear some of these, to be honest. I mean, that, I think I'd look pretty. This one is £600 for the Carnaby Army Action Man. Remember my Action Man? I loved Action Man. Whoa. I won't be collecting any Action Men. The same with Lego and all these other ones like Subbuteo or any sort of things like Subbuteo especially. If you go and look for the original ones from the 60s and 70s, they're just so expensive. Did they have Subbuteo? They had Subbuteo in the 60s. 60s in Queen, obviously one of the magazines at the time, and this is full of lots of images of the 60s, the Establishment Chronicle, Most Eligible Men. I don't know any of them. However, obviously Paris, as well as some adverts, of course, and also the Social Survey of the British Upper Class, Debs with a Difference, £5 a word, apparently, by Truman Capote. This one, Vogue, instead of obviously Queen, 60s in the Vogue. And of course, it's full of obviously lots of examples. Obviously, there, Marilyn Monroe, and obviously Kennedy, as well as the humour of the period, and Marion Faithfull and Mick Jagger, as well as Andy Warhol, Rita Tushenham, and Verushka, and Peter Cook. Another magazine one, a collection of. I love these ones. This collection. This one's London Life. It's one of those ones where I felt that it would have been much nicer if it had been a super thick book. But this is the magazine of the swinging 60s, and you can see the covers on the front, all the way around. Now, London Life actually existed into the earlier, 1930s, whatever, but it was obviously for this period. Loads of different magazines there, examples there, all the way through 1966. You got there, 1966, September 66, and you got London Scene, 11 variations. David Bailey, very unusual. The battle to bring colour to your screen. And some fashions of the period as well. Also information where to sup before you go. When you look at all these ones, you've got Apollo, Globe, etc. It tells you all the various nearest pubs, hot food, cold food, speciality, oysters, drinks, all the various draft, double diamond, draft, red bit, barrel. Do they still exist? I assume they do. I have no idea. Also, Modesty Blaze, of course. And also, I love these ones where it shows you sort of all the places to go in swinging 60s London. Party time with London Life. This is an unusual one. Domus. This is, of course, one of their smaller ones from Taschen, 1960s to 1969. It's full of some just absolutely brilliant Domus magazines. Now, of course, it doesn't include everything from the magazine. Some of it, of course, is in like Italian as well as French, etc. But you can see all the magazines there, Domus, or Domus, I don't know how they said it, called it. And you can see there, obviously, some photos, obviously, of buildings and various things. I mean, just beautiful, beautiful all the way through this. And this one's, now, most of them, of course, like Italy, Switzerland, etc. But there are some English ones as well, and also American ones. It's a whole mix. And this one is in Milan. This one in New York, JFK Kennedy, obviously, Airport, 1964. Another one from Milan. Strange enough, lots of Italian design. Very unusual design there. Costa Brava. I love the astronauts there. Absolutely brilliant. From London, an advertisement. This one's an album covers. Very tiny, 1960s. Now I've got lots of books of covers. This one's Breakfast at Tiffany's. Now, unfortunately, they're very small. That's the one trouble. You've got Mary Poppins, Nat King Cole. Now, quite a lot of these album covers I don't really associate with the 60s, so it's quite fascinating going through. You always have sort of the Beatles one, Sgt. Pepper, etc., the Kinks albums, Rolling Stones. But, of course, there's also Glenn Campbell, the Moody Blues, as well as, of course, The Graduate. But, of course, you've got to have the Beatles. 60s fashion. This is another Taschen one. I love Taschen books. They're always great. Pick up lots and lots. They're normally quite reasonably priced, certainly in the smaller ones. Sometimes, of course, you get the ones that are like 50, 60 pounds, the real huge ones, or even more expensive. I generally don't pick those up. One, they're always weigh a ton, but it's really nice to pick up sort of obviously the small one. They are queen size. You've got various things. Not certain which ones those are. Prel, I should say. Prel for kicks. Just been watching an absolutely fascinating video about pants and obviously pockets. Quite amazing the way the fashions have changed, where the pockets have suddenly vanished, or now maybe coming back. But still, it was just fascinating watching about pockets. That's the one thing about YouTube's great, I think, is you can find out so many different things about things you never probably think much about. You got there Puritan as well as some lipstick there. Are you ready for Centaur? I'm not certain what even that is. Cologne, apparently. Another Taschen book, Decorative Arts of the 60s. Now, I don't know if you can get a slightly bigger one than this, but I'm quite happy with this small size. As mentioned, I just think sometimes the real big ones are great, but they just weigh a ton. Also, they're impossible to sort of store anywhere. So I quite like this one, Townhouse there in New York City. This one's in Tokyo, in Stuttgart, in Italy, in Switzerland. More chairs. You've got to have chairs. You can't get a book with chairs, as well as beds and sofas and chairs and various tapestries, etc., and bowls and lights. This is a lovely one. Ready, Steady, Go. One of my favourite shows that I never saw. Well, I probably saw a few episodes, but unfortunately, of course, most of them have been deleted. Long gone. I think it's about 12 or so episodes available. And, well, there's obviously various things like this available. There's also a Ready, Steady, Go, a massive, huge show. I've done a review of that before, so I just thought, but I'm going to show you this one instead. Rolling Stones, obviously, on Ready, Steady, Go. Marianne Faithfull on Ready, Steady, Go, and Georgie Fame on Ready, Steady, Go. Unfortunately, some parts of it have been cut out, but obviously that was Dusty Springfield, Alan Price, Chris Curtis, Dave Clark, etc. These are always interesting, these sort of books. Sounds from the 60s. This one is Club 60 and the Esquire. And it's obviously a fairly small range printed uncertain book. It's obviously, yes, it's printed by Amazon, but it's full of some great images. Absolutely brilliant photos of the time. Dave Sugarberry and the original cruises, and also tons and tons of information as well. Pound notes and badges. Very odd. Lots of pictures there. Zoot Money and his big roll band, apparently. The Animals Speak Out and Long John Broadbury. Joe Cocker and the Big Booze Band. The Big Booze Band. That's a great name for a band, isn't it? The Art of the 60s. Another, obviously, art design book of the 60s. You can see there, Roy Lichtenstein, Pure Newell. And, strange enough, Carnaby Street again, obviously there. Oh, that's Lord John. That one's Lord John. See Mick Jagger there. And, wow, that's an interesting poster. Frank Habicht. I've never said his name right. In the 60s. And this is just full of some great images all the way through. Black and white. but it's just glorious. Obviously, the Hyde Park concert, medieval times. Another great source for lots of imagery of that period. Modern publicity. This one's not obviously 39, 1969 to 1970. And I've got quite a few of these ones, and I just love these sort of design books because it's just full of images all the way through, obviously of that particular year or obviously the previous year. Scandals. Yeah, you've got designs there, various adverts, as well as the magazines and the books, press advertisements, packaging, as well as the TV adverts at the time, as well as the books, as well as the fonts, and much, much more. And finally, Graphics Britain. This one's a very unusual book, a real favourite though, I must admit. I love the design in this. Just full, it's black and white, I think mainly black and white. In fact, it's all black and white. But it's just full of so many examples of the 60s of that time. 1966, I think it's 1966. So I'm just going to have a quick look. I am quite certain saying it's 1966, and then it turns out, actually, the book was 1971. It doesn't actually say particularly the time, so you can see there various other examples there. I love that sort of sketchy style. I must admit, that's just really evocative for me of the 60s design. Some of the magazines, letter heading, and yet more fonts of the time. So that's a run through of my 60s books. I love the 60s period. I've got lots and lots of other examples. Obviously, I've got magazines and various, obviously, comics. You could probably have about 5 hours worth of running through all books with bits and pieces from the 60s. But it's one of those periods that I just think is fascinating, always fascinating. I love watching TV programmes about the 60s, as well as, of course, the 70s as well. I've got quite a few books about the 70s as well, a period I probably know slightly better than the 60s. Now, I was born in the 60s, but of course, obviously, I didn't really I must follow all the various things. When I was 5 and 6, I wasn't thinking, you know what, I must collect all these sort of things about the 60s. I didn't do that. Whereas in the 70s, I was certainly a lot more conscious. Though I must admit, in the 70s, I was very much, I was more into the punk period, so it was like rejection of the 60s. But over time, I sort of thought, you know what, the 60s was an absolutely amazing period, and I have built up a reasonable collection of various things associated with the 60s. And of course, all my various Marvel comic books and DC books, lots of that material from the 60s and 70s, of course, as well. Anyway, is it a period that you like, or is it a period you really do not like? Not everyone's going to like the 60s. Are you interested in that time or not? Maybe you're perhaps more interested in the 70s, 80s, or maybe even more importantly, now, of course. That is the most important time, as always. Anyway, please add a thumbs up. Always appreciate any thumbs up. Just great. Also, please subscribe to the channel. Really great if you could do that. Well, I hope you found this of interest. Bye.